Garden Report is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Media Day edition of the Garden Report as the 2024-25 season begins. Noah Dalzell here from You Got Boston podcast here on CLNS Media and SB Nation. And it's a pretty relaxed, pretty confident, pretty assertive day in terms of what this team needs to do to repeat this year. Everybody seemed to be on the same page of number one, tuning out the outside noise, whether it's positive or negative. Number two, doing the same things they did last year in terms of sacrifice, knowing their role, all that. And then number three, being able to adjust on the fly. And obviously the first big wrinkle we'll get to in our next video is Kristaps Porzingis being out to start the year. But one thing I liked about today was just the overarching tone and the level of even relaxation, I would say, that was pretty evident across the board here. You could definitely sense the weight that was off everybody's shoulders because of their championship.
Yeah, and I thought there was a spectrum of weight lifted off their shoulders. Like Jaylen Brown, you know, he clearly came in and he has a different way about him. And I don't know if it's going to last the whole season, but today he was laughing, he was joking around. The first question that he got was about the Olympic DNP, and he was kind of like, this is the first question I'm going to get. Joked around a couple of times, and you could just tell he had a great summer, accomplished a lot. You know, something with the shoe he said is dropping, so there's some advancements there. But I don't know that like kind of relaxed weight off their shoulder feeling was evident in everybody. Like I thought Tatum seemed like the same Jason Tatum that we saw a year ago.
Well, heavy, yeah. We'll get to him.
And I think part of it is also like they've each had their own unique individual experience alongside winning the championship, right? Their narratives have been different and everything. But yeah, overall, I think that you saw a concerted effort by leadership, you know, from Drew Holiday to Joe Mazzulla to Brad Stevens to say kind of nothing is that different this season. Everything is the same. We happened to win last year, but we're not going to walk around like so much has changed.
Yeah, and 13 players coming back, some new faces. Lonnie Walker here. Brad Stevens addressed him making the team, said it's pretty similar to other guys that they'll have in camp, see how it goes, and then go from there. Sam Hauser seemed pretty impressed by Baylor Shireman, as Al Horford was when I talked to him a couple of days ago. We'll get to talk to some of the guys lower on the roster further down the line there. But Brad and Joe did stick out to me. Obviously, Brad stressing that's going to be harder this time around. Yeah. It's always difficult, even from the first game. I thought that stood out in some of the interviews he did over the summer, is that he really wants this group tight from the start. I don't think they want any hangover effect to happen. And just judging from the sense and the excitement of these guys want to be back, I don't sense that that's going to be the case here, especially since you heard different guys. Drew Holiday, I think at one point, actually repeated exactly what Joe said in terms of some people are going to think you're going to suck and some people think you're going to be great, just like always. And all the way down the line, everybody seemed to be expressing a lot of Joe-isms. So
they're rubbing in year three.
They're listening. Yeah. They're tuned in. It looks like they're all ready to go. I know Jalen joked that he could have used a couple more weeks, but the vibes are just really good today. And that's always the case on Media Day. But in most cases, it felt a little different than in years past.
I mean, definitely, I'm sure if we looked back at all the defending champions, they probably enjoy Media Day the most, right? Mm-hmm. There's not that much scrutiny. You get to relish a little bit one last time, maybe get to take some questions on the championship and how you spend your summer. But something that stood out with me from the beginning is that Brad has made very clear that he wants to move forward like as soon as possible. I mean, I remember we heard from him in June, you know, ahead of all the draft things, and he was already saying like, we're on to the next, you know, and so certainly by now in September, like the page has turned. And I think the only ones that were even still really enjoying, even relishing and talking about the championship was like Al Horford, who reflected on some of the fun things that he did going back to the Dominican Republic. But for the most part, you could tell like the questions about last year, like they were kind of ready to turn over to this season and to not take anything for granted or assume that it's going to be just running it back, but actually starting from scratch.
Yeah, and what did you think? I thought one thing that was interesting, Joe said, and I think Brad alluded to it too, we all assumed it'd be great, it'd be ideal to run the team back. But I think Brad at one point said, sometimes you like making a few tweaks to keep things interesting, to keep things competitive. And Joe even said the same. It could be good to have the same team back. It could be bad to have the same team back. That might have actually been the biggest surprise of the day to me, because I feel like it's a given that you run back the same team that just won the title. That's ideal. But they seem to think that could go either way.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because I think from the fan perspective, it's like all your favorite players are coming back, right? And all the people that you saw contribute to a championship team resign. So that's obviously a good thing. And in the same vein, like fans don't like when players get shipped away, like when Marcus Smart got traded, that was hard for everybody, right? But at the same time, like that jolt was good ultimately for this team. And so it's not a huge surprise to me to have that acknowledged. But I thought that Brad Stevens said something that stood out. He said, sometimes it can be galvanizing to have a tweak, to have a different player, but I think that this group can galvanize each other. And so you might see that they come out to a little bit of a slow start, and now we see some sort of trade that seems to just kind of mix things up because they felt like they needed that shift in the locker room. They needed a fresh voice. They needed a dynamic to change, an increased opportunity for somebody. But I think they realize like they want to give it a chance without that. And that stood out. Like he thinks that this team can kind of build off of one another and inspire each other without requiring like another star to come in or even another bench player.
Yeah, and Brad mentioned that at draft time too. I thought that was one of the underrated comments from back then is we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Might have to make some changes this year. And they have a couple guys going out the door in O'Shea Brissett, Shvi Mihailuk. They'll try to reproduce those minutes when they're shorthanded with the Jaden Springers and Baylor Shinemans of the world. And we'll get to hear from more of those younger guys, lower guys on the roster throughout this week. So stay tuned to coverage of practice, which is going to take place on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday here at the Auerbach Center. Our coverage is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to the Prize Picks app and use the code CLNS to get a $50 bonus when you place a $5 play on Prize Picks, or use CLNS on Game Time to get $20 off your first purchase on that app. Whether you're going to concerts or sporting events this fall, go over there, terms apply. And Nutrafol, go to Nutrafol.com and use the code GARDEN for $10 off your first month subscription, as well as free shipping. That's Nutrafol, code GARDEN for Noah Dalzell. I'm Bobby Mann. We're going to talk about Kristaps Porzingis' injury and where he's at in his recovery, as well as Jason Tatum working on his shot. One of the more interesting developments of the day here at Media Day. So go check out those videos here on Celtics All Access. Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS